saw it.
I don't either. That's a real mistake.
Yeah, I don't either. And then actually that desktop looks a lot like mine.
That's me.
And my daughter, the librarian's like, will you clean that up? But then I couldn't find anything.
It really messes up your computer.
Those items are all categorizable on my desktop.
So you can create a folder.
Yeah, just create folders for them.
Hey, you know, we could reconvene and discuss the Kanuma Trail at Feckin Group. They're open now.
I'll second that.
Yeah, all in favor?
Only Achille retreats.
You have to prove that to
But
a
I can't
decision
even
item
partake.
first.
That's not fair.
We don't care. This is all you buy drinks.
Man, Bill, just right out of the gate with good suggestions.
Okay. All right.
Ooh.
Go through the lights.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to officially call the meeting before we dim the lights too fall. The call order. Has everybody had the chance to look at the agenda? Kelly Reed's going to make a presentation here.
Yes.
Okay, so having officially called to order, and I don't know if we have to do a roll call or not. Pete knows who's here.
Yeah, let's do it for the public.
Okay.
And we would just say your name and.
All right,
Who's left?
Matt Cool, present.
Doug Neely?
Bill Clark?
Nancy Broshot.
All right. And we have a presentation for Kelly Reed on the Kanuma Trail.
Hey, thank you.
Or should I say Mclaughlin Kanuma Trail?
I'm sorry?
And this is the Mclaughlin Kanuma Trail. McLaughlin.
It's a mouthful. All right.
Do you need the?
Quick note to myself. Oh, a clicker would be
clicker?
great.
Let's see, this may be the one.
Yeah, we can bring that up
All
there.
right. So I was here
Just pull that back here.
maybe a few months ago
You know, I have a cranker head.
to update you all on this project. So I don't want to be too repetitive, but I will summarize kind of where we've been and how far we've come. And then if the committee would like to make a motion and make a recommendation on this that would go to the Planning Commission, City Commission, that's wonderful. It's not necessary, but the Planning Commission did ask last time we went to them for the first public hearing, you know, if we had any of our advisory groups besides the trail advisory group, if any of the city committees or advisory groups had voted on it. So I think they like to hear, you know, opinions and recommendations and see motions by the advisory group. So if you'd like to do that after my presentation, that's wonderful. Okay. So the Mclaughlin Kanuma Trail aims to connect the Mclaughlin Promenade to the Kanuma neighborhood, and specifically to Kanuma Children's Park and Kanuma Bluff. And then of course along the way we've got Old Kanuma Park, and so we have a lot of kind of city park facilities and amenities in the area that we're seeking to connect with a trail. Not just for recreation use, but also, you know, for pedestrian safety, so that people can kind of get from A to B, travel safely through the area. Currently, Kanuma doesn't have any real safe pedestrian connections to other parts of the city due to the topography and all that. So this would accomplish that as well. So we've got, and not only the parks that I mentioned, but the river walk would eventually connect to this trail as well, because there is a pedestrian bridge in the river walk plan that would come up from the old mill site and land right by, on the promenade, right by the VFW hall. So this would, you know, eventually connect to that when that pedestrian bridge is put in. So our existing transportation system plan anticipated and planned for this trail, it has a shared use path and what we call family-friendly routes in the plan. So this trail plan is really kind of a refinement of what's already in our system plans. And then, of course, we have the Trails Master Plan as well that has the old Kanuma Mclaughlin connection. Back in 2004, this was envisioned as well in the Trails Master Plan.
Nice.
So existing conditions, we've got some very wonderful, nice areas existing, like Old Kanuma Park, and then we've got some areas that aren't as friendly to the potential trail user, especially along 99. And then within Kanuma, we have a really unique environment, but no separated pedestrian facilities and very narrow streets, which makes any shared space kind of a challenge here. Especially considering it's a National Register Historic District and sidewalks and curbs have been ruled out in that neighborhood. And so, we had quite a challenge to deal with here. We looked at options kind of north and south of Kanuma on 99 and on South End Road as well. So we've got challenges with all the options we looked at. This plan went through a very robust community engagement process. We created a community advisory group, kind of got in touch with lots of stakeholders and folks, everybody that lives or owns property along the trail corridor, invited them to be on an advisory group. We ended up with, I think, about 16 people on that advisory group, and held 4 meetings. We also had a series of other meetings and a Greenway for a Day event, which I'll talk about. So this community advisory group had representation from the NRC and a lot of other city groups and community groups, and then of course property owners, several different property owners and residents in the area. Greenway for a Day we held over the summer on July 29th. We actually lined out the trail with cones and balloons and things and invited people to come out and use it. And we blocked off the streets within Kanuma to local traffic only so that we could have a more pleasant place for people to walk. And so we actually had a really great participation in that. We had folks bring their kids and their dogs, and it had a lot of fun there. So we were able to capture some of their opinions through a survey and through some boards. You can see people kind of marking their preferences on these boards here.
Had nice weather, looks like.
Yeah, it was hot. One of the things that we asked them after they walked the trail was, what was your favorite part and what was your least favorite part? And everybody's favorite part was Old Kanuma Park, and they loved the tranquility of it. Also, at the same time as this event, we partnered with the Parks Foundation, who some of you may have been there. They hosted an ivy pole in the park. So the park was being cleaned up, and people were kind of traveling through, and it was a really nice day for that. And a lot of great work was done to remove ivy in that park.
Yeah. Last slide. Picture on the right. I'm trying to figure out where that is in my brain.
That's in front of the PGE substation. So if you're walking along 99, before you hit the park, you'll walk by the PGE substation. Yeah. So they allowed us, this is on their private property, but they allowed us access for the day to
What's
kind of
that street up there above? Is that Center? Or?
Where?
The street.
On which
I think that's part of PGE.
Oh, yeah, it's not a street. That's their
PGE
fenced-in substation.
Facility.
Oh, okay.
I'll point it out to you on the map when the map comes up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we looked at 3 different alignment alternatives that had kind of a lot of different trail segments within. But as a kind of a consolidated summary of some of those segments, we have alignment A, which uses the boardwalk mostly on the other side of Mclaughlin. It doesn't access Old Kanuma Park, which was one of the major faults of this option, but it did use kind of an existing boardwalk that people already use. Alignment B, and this is what we had. This is what we use for the Greenway for a Day event, because it's really the only safe option right now that we could really be willing to ask people to walk on. So this goes along 99, and then the PG substation is right here, Bill.
Right.
Oh, sorry, you can't see that. So it's this. So that picture, the lady was walking right along here, along that fence. So the fence is basically fenced in this whole big area.
So can you walk there now?
Well, technically it's trespassing. We got permission from PGE to use it for that event. But what we know is that people today walk there all the time. They walk behind the substation and in front of the substation, because we can see a little trail that's kind of been, we call it a desire line. It's just a little goat trail that clearly people are walking there, even though it's not a formal trail. So that's alignment B. And then alignment C used High Street, South End Road, and then went up into Kanuma, kind of at the top of Kanuma along 5th. And this also kind of bypassed the park. And so because we heard from people like the park's the best part, we really wanted to find a solution that utilized the park, so that these other alignments had really good aspects, but overall they were not really ranked the highest. And so we had this evaluation matrix. I'm not going to go through all of it right now, but the alignment B was got the highest score overall, and is the final recommendation is based on alignment B. So we've got kind of an interim and a permanent recommendation. In the interim, we think we can do some improvements fairly quickly and create a trail that maybe doesn't cost quite as much and doesn't look fully finished, but at least allows some sort of safe passage for people. And then we have a permanent alignment, which is, I'll go back to this stuff, mostly the same, but varies a little bit in these locations. And so the improvements for the permanent trail are going to take a little bit more time and money, and so that's why we'd like to make some interim improvements and then kind of see if we can get the more robust trail later on. So yeah, I'll go back and look at the interim. So we're coming out of the Promenade Park onto 2nd Street using the existing sidewalk on High Street, and then turning on South 2nd. Really, you can kind of cross South 2nd anywhere up here at High Street if you'd like, or you can walk down by the Still House and cross at 99E, and then you're walking along 99E into Old Kanuma Park, and then into the Kanuma neighborhood where you're sharing the street. So this is that promenade to 2nd Street view. So really, you maybe see some sort of pavement eventually, connecting to the promenade so that it's ADA accessible. And then along 99, we're looking at creating some sort of separated trail that's wide enough for users, to kind of pass each other. And really, we'd like some sort of vertical buffer to protect those folks from the traffic on Highway 99. I think this slide is misplaced. I'm going to have to fix that. I apologize. Within Kanuma, we'd be sharing the street as these folks are here, kind of all users, bikes, people walking, cars, all walking on in the same area. And to make that safe, we really want to slow the traffic down. People drive pretty slowly in Kanuma already because they're parked cars, narrow streets. So it's not actually that bad to walk in Kanuma, but then every now and then you get somebody speeding through. And so we can and are going to change the speed limit to 20 miles per hour. We're going to put some on-street markings that look like that little black and white kind of stencil there. That it won't look exactly like that, but that's just one idea. Some visual narrowing with paint, wayfinding signage, and potentially adding a few more stop signs and speed humps in the neighborhood.
Have you seen the 3D painted traffic calming stencils?
No.
They appear, it appears to be almost a wall as you drive up to
I
it.
know what you're talking about now. Yeah, the crosswalk kind of can be painted with shadows, and it makes it look like it's lifted, but it's really not. Yeah, I have seen that. So for the permanent trail, the improvements would, well, first of all, we'd come through the VFW parking lot onto Tumwater Drive, then potentially cross South Second at Tumwater or at 99, and then continue on 99. But there is also an option to go behind some of this property here. That would be a really long-term option, but what we heard from some folks is that really walking along 99 is so unattractive and unpleasant that they'd really like an option that doesn't require them to do that. And so if there's redevelopment that occurs of some of these properties and there's an ability to get a trail kind of along the back of that development in a safe way, then that's potentially an option. Alternatively, we could kind of put all of our eggs in the basket of making Highway 99 safer and even more of a kind of a nice permanent trail. So the VFW driveway currently looks like this. It's a one-way driveway. It's pretty steep. Visibility is poor, and so the permanent trail would include some sort of widening or addition of a paved pathway adjacent to this driveway, so that people would have a safe place to walk. People walk there now. It's just not the greatest option. And then we're not sure if the trail would cross South Second at Tumwater yet or not, but if it did, this would be a potential design solution for that. You've got people coming down the hill to get to the light at 99, and having one of those flashing beacons there could, make crossing a lot safer, especially adding that landscaped island in the middle. So you get halfway across and you can wait for the rest of the cars to stop for you. And then of course the trail would be 10 to 12 feet wide along the side of Tumwater, going by the museum. And then of course on the other side of South Second as well. On this is the section of Tumwater that kind of right here. If some of these properties redeveloped, then Tumwater could potentially look like this with a nice wide side path next to some of this new development. There's enough space in the right-of-way to accommodate that. I'm going to skip through this stuff because it's just the land use gobbledygook that Pete and I have to deal with, and that we're bringing to the Planning Commission with all the review criteria that they're looking at. But essentially, the trail plan is being proposed as an amendment to the transportation system plan, and then we're updating some of our projects to reflect the revised trail alignment or refined trail alignment. So this one, project S36 there, that one needs to be updated based on the most recent proposal. So that one, I apologize, is not updated yet. But we are just kind of amending some of these bicycle and pedestrian projects. We're adding that crossing at Tumwater, so that's green dot, and then we're adding also that yellow dot there. There's a left turn from Mclaughlin to Tumwater that we are, the committee and everyone involved, including ODOT, said, yeah, let's shut that left turn down. Let's close it off. It'll be a lot safer if we just close that off. So that's what we would do. You would no longer be able to turn left onto Tumwater Drive, and so it'd be a lot safer for the trail users coming down from the VFW driveway.
I thought the only reason they kept that was because it was a last ditch thing for some of the 99E incidents to turn big trucks around.
Yeah, so it would be closed off to left turns, but we're talking with ODOT about, do we put a gate up, or do we put removable bollards, or what do we put there? Because you're right, it is going to be an emergency turnaround for big trucks, and so every however many years, we have a big rock slide or something and we need to use that turnaround. We actually haven't needed to use it in the past decade at least, but they would come up Mclaughlin, turn left on South 2nd, turn another left on Tumwater, and then turn right back onto Mclaughlin, and that would be with flaggers and folks helping them do that. So the barrier that we're creating there to eliminate the left turns can't be like a solid wall. It has to be something that's removable.
What happens, the green dot, you were saying they're gonna put like the green thing, like a walkway, but like the green center thing? Would that, if you're taking a truck up there and turning left, is that going to stick out far enough that would be a problem? Because that's kind of a tight corner.
Yeah, so it would be potentially this,
right?
This improvement here. Yeah, so the trucks would, we'd have to make sure the turning radius works there.
Right.
This is just a concept sketch.
Right.
It would have to be like engineered. Yeah.
That's such a bottleneck right there.
But if you, we actually heard from some business owners here that people coming out from Tumwater just have, and I've experienced it too, have the hardest time, and they've seen so many crashes and near misses there. It's really not a safe place, especially was Doug, were you on our site walk when we did our back in June? We did the walk with the advisory group. We came in and we're trying to cross there, and Larry from VFW had to go out in the middle of the street and do this and stop traffic to let us all cross because it was just really awful. So
I drive that every day to and from work.
And the Stillhouse owner said that some of the staff are running across the street and risking their lives, and it's just not.
But they're not running across at corners. They're literally running in the middle of the street, which may be safer, but.
At 4 o'clock, traffic backs up from there on 99E, clear almost to 10th Street. And this intersection is part of the mess.
Yeah. And so, we've talked a lot with ODOT about that, and we'd have to work through this with ODOT before we could really get any.
It'd be nice to get a pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, how much money?
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I know. Dream on.
We need to do a super cheap one.
We're gonna have one of those signals where the lights flash so people know they have to stop,
But even
if they don't, but
Even on the future one, you're ending up and going back to Mclaughlin before you come back into Kanuma, right?
You're going back to Mclaughlin.
Boulevard. That is, you're going through a potential new development, but it looked like your trail was taking you back to Mclaughlin.
Yeah, well, there are multiple options for the permanent trail, so we don't really know, but you could be going back up. So if that's the case, then maybe crossing at Tumwater doesn't make them as much sense. So, that's why we have multiple options in there, because we just don't know enough yet to know what the permanent trail alignment would really be. So you'll see in the next steps that we have some next steps that are further study of X, Y, or Z. So that we're also amending the Trails and Parks Master Plans. This trail segment is actually part of the Oregon City Loop Trail. So we're going to make sure that that's all consistent in our plans, and then we'll revise the description of the original trail project to reflect the new trail alignment. So we give some red lines to that plan, and then for next steps. In the shorter term, we've got pursuing the 20 miles per hour speed limit change, working with ODOT to do the Tumwater Drive closure. That actually might be able to happen in 2018, because they are going to be doing some other projects that require some temporary closures. And they said, well, if we can toss that in and get it done along with those projects, then why not? So to be determined, but fingers crossed we can do that this year. We're going to be working on the interim improvements to 99. You know, can we get some barriers or buffers out there to create a space for pedestrians even though there's no formal sidewalk? Be doing outreach to Kanuma to talk about and figure out exactly how those street markings will be applied on the streets in Kanuma. We can High Street will be resurfaced, and with that we can put some the Shero symbols on the street. We need a survey. We need to conduct a study of crossing South 2nd Street at Tumwater or at 99 or at High Street. You know, figure out which one is best. We need a trail signage plan, and I think that would be coordinated with Parks and Rec for like overall, make sure it's consistent with citywide signage, and so you might see some new signage at Old Kanuma Park, and then kind of in the longer term, trying to find grant funds, constructing some of the trail improvements, and getting that permanent trail figured out. So I think that's all I have.
Could you go back to the one where you actually have the 3 alignments also showing the original trail? Can't tell you, when you just scroll through, I'll tell you the one to stop at.
This one?
No. Well, I guess this will kind of do it for me. The original alignment that you were talking about actually did not go into Mclaughlin Boulevard, and all the designs here that you have now focused on do. I mean, I've been involved in discussions and so forth. So, and I know that you've gone through all these before, but there had been at one point talk about taking it down South End Trail, South End Road, and then bring it down to Old Kanuma Park. And I presume there were elements of that that were just not pragmatic. But I'd like you, if you would, to talk about where there was some discussion about coming up South End Road and then cutting down into Old Kanuma Park.
Yeah. So there was an option we looked at coming up South End, and there is a shoulder there. It varies in width, and so in some places there's probably 10 feet of width, which is great, but then in other places it gets down to about 2 feet, and you've got cars whizzing by you on one side and a giant basalt rock, and you're like inching by. So there would be some blasting and road work that would be necessary to make that safe. We found that to be quite costly.
Yeah.
And we had some of our advisory group members did go out on a site visit, and we walked that together. And some of those folks said, actually, this is not a really pleasant experience. Even if you did have a separate, a wide trail, it's not really all that pleasant. And it's less direct. There was talk of, coming off of South End, kind of somewhere within the PGE property, And, you know, the topography is steep, but there are, you know, areas that are, you can get through. And you can kind of weave your way along the cliff here and then meet up with the old existing trail in Old Kanuma Park. That trail is quite steep on that upper portion. So if you walk the lower portion that's down by Mclaughlin, it's fairly flat, but once you get up into the upper park, it's pretty steep. And I measured one of the slopes, it was over 30, it was about 30%. And we were really trying to get a route that would be as close to ADA as possible, knowing that we absolutely can't meet ADA using any of the topography in this area, but let's do the best we can. So that, you know, somebody in a wheelchair or a kid on a bike or a parent with a stroller won't have such a hard time. So using that option was problematic for that reason. And then there were some that had the great idea of, well, you know, maybe that's not a great multi-use trail, but it would be a great nature trail. You know, to have that trail kind of come off through the woods here, come off of Old Kanuma Park Trail and then go in this direction. So, you know, we did discuss that, but it kind of seemed like it was outside of the scope of our trail plan, and so it didn't really make it into any recommendations, but it was discussed, and there's definitely some support out there for adding some more nature trails.
Even though it's not part of the design you're talking about, I think as you progress on through the Planning Commission, City Commission, do bring out that potential of having a nature trail in that. I think the other thing is when you have I presume there are going to be Jersey barriers separating the traffic from the pedestrians and the bikes. Can you paint or do something with them to make them more attractive than these gray things at least on the pedestrian side? I don't know what you have there, but
well, you know, we talked about landscaping, like using planter boxes or something, which might be an option. But anything that we do, just about anything we do on 99 has to go through an ODOT design exception process. So ODOT can't even tell us right now what they will approve. Like, we have to go through a process with them.
I wasn't talking about painting on the side of the cars. They're not going to pay any attention anyway. I was just thinking from the pedestrian side. Yeah. So we still don't know exactly what we can put there. Like ODOT tried to steer us away from Jersey barriers, but I think they would let us do it as long as there was enough buffer room, so that cars wouldn't be running into them. Yeah, I mean, just from the safety aspect of it, I would not think they would object to having some type of barrier there.
Yeah, you know, it's always a challenge to work with ODOT because they're worried about the cars hitting the Jersey barriers, but we're worried about the cars hitting the people.
The only thing they worry about is traffic movement.
And then also, just because I'm talking to the NRC, I'll mention in Old Kanuma Park, the current trail is about 5.5 feet wide. There are a lot of trees along the side of that, and so to widen it to a 10 to 12 foot trail, we would have to do some tree removal. And right now, a lot of the roots, because you know there's like no soil, it's all basalt, 2 inches of soil and basalt. So all these tree roots are right on the surface, and the asphalt on the trail is just like this in some places. And so we would be, you know, cutting all that out and kind of redoing the trail surface in Old Kanuma Park, which would require some tree removal. But, you know, I think we got a really great start doing the ivy pull, and hopefully we can kind of continue working with the Parks Foundation and this trail group to collaborate on things like that. So, any questions at all? Any more questions?
What's the overall timeline that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, so this is going to the Planning Commission, City Commission for adoption in February and March. Once it's adopted, then we can start moving forward with those next steps I talked about. And so some of the things can happen this year, like the 20-mile-per-hour zone in Kanuma and getting that Tumwater left turn closed. But a lot of it's dependent on funding. So I'm, tracking different grant opportunities. This project itself, we hired a consultant to help us with it, and that was grant funded. So we don't have a whole lot of funding for new trails, but if we can get grants, then we can make our funding go a little bit farther. So I don't know exactly what kind of timeline we'd be looking at yet.
Thank you. Any other comments before we take, entertain a motion to support this project? Do I hear a motion to support this project?
I move to support the Kanuma Mclaughlin connection.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
I didn't see anybody say otherwise, so there we go.
Well, thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you,
And
Kelly.
our upcoming Planning Commission hearing is February 12th. There are a lot of folks that, a lot of local neighbors that I think are excited about this trail, but it's always hard to get people to show up and testify and write letters at public hearings. So the more comments that the Planning Commission and City Commission see from the community, I think the more confidence they'll have in approving the trail plan. So if any of you want to write a letter or anything, I can send you, we have some templates that you can start from. And I'd be happy to send those to you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
me tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
Election of Natural Resource Committee officers for 2018. Now, I got this email from Pete saying that our bylaws say we're supposed to have a secretary. Is there, now tell me, is there any other advisory committee that has in its
I don't
bylaws a
know.
secretary?
That's a good question, Doug.
I think we've talked about that before.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, realistically, in the bylaws, the only thing it talks about as far as a duty for the secretary is the minutes, which are essentially automated and transcribed by someone who contracts for the city now. And on top of that, the direction from the city council is that all boards and committees will be moving towards a much more abbreviated form of minutes, which are action-oriented anyway. And then the video transcription will become the formal record. That being said,
What will happen to us if we do not appoint a secretary? Other than being in violation of our bylaws.
well, I wouldn't go as far as to call it a violation. I would just say it would be a vacancy, as it has been for the last.
I mean, currently we have a chair and a vice chair. And,
Right, yeah.
And I'll just throw it open. Does anybody want to take over the chairship?
No. I nominate you.
Yeah. I second.
Bottom line, really, is this position would be responsible for needling me to get the minutes to you in a draft
Now,
format.
you're talking about the secretary's position.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a draft format on time so that we can approve them in a fairly timely manner. Because sometimes it's the last thing I remember to do before putting the agenda together. So it's really just,
Can the chair take on the
Poking
responsibility of
and the chair can do that too.
So is anybody interested in a nominating a position for the vice chairs currently held by Trent? I'll nominate Trent, but I'll nominate Trent, but if somebody else wants to nominate somebody else, we can do that, and we're going to go to a vote. Anybody interested in the vice chair, I'll be happy to nominate them. Does somebody want to nominate Trent?
I'll nominate Trent in his absence.
Okay. So, take a vote on those positions. For Trent, did we take a vote on me?
I move we vote to approve the nomination of Doug Neely and Trent Warnes as chairman and vice chairman respectively.
Seconded? All in
I
favor, say
second.
aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, very good.
That was
Yeah.
easy. Great, thanks.
Now, the resolution for NRC bylaws revisions, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah,
That was part of the, that was part of the election.
that was the secretary piece that you were talking about.
The next,
Do we want, I'll ask it, and I don't know what the process is, do we actually want to remove that from the bylaws?
yeah, I mean, I think the process for amending the bylaws is written at the end of the bylaws, I believe. So let me look that down. Yeah, so item 7 under Article 6, which is, the following process shall be followed in order to make changes or amendments to the bylaws. It will be proposed and discussed at a scheduled meeting. Voting will take place at the next scheduled meeting. A 2/3 vote of a quorum present is necessary for approval of proposed bylaw changes.
Now, does this have to also be, then
Yeah.
our has to be taken to the city commission for the changes?
Yeah, for approval.
Well, let's go ahead and schedule that, if that's all right, just schedule that removal, for we're not even using it
Right.
for the next meeting then.
Okay.
We have the work plan documents we had for 2017. I wanted to call these forward, and if we can take this on to the next meeting, but I thought it'd be beneficial to go through these a bit and see if in fact we want to take actions to, we've reviewed them in November. If we want to take any action to actually change them for goals in 2018. I'll take a moment with goal 1. I will tell you that the signage is up at Abernathy Creek at 2 locations.
Doug, I have pictures of that if you want me to show them.
Sure, that would be Washington Street and Anchor Way. Coffee Creek is on Warner Milne, where it comes adjacent to Chapin Park. Singer Creek is on Pearl. Newell Creek is, in fact, where it crosses Beaver Creek, right there next to the Environmental Center. Caulfield Creek is not up. It would have to be put up by the state, and we were not initially talking about having it there at, and I'm talking about the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, having it there at the, where Tooth's Pond is, but since it's an ODOT thing, and as was suggested by the previous staff person that spoke with, ODOT is problematic to deal with. We're moving it on to Glen Oak Road, where actually Caulfield Creek actually crosses Glen Oak Road. So that one is not up yet. The one on Mud Creek is, in fact, there on Myers, next to that utility line that crosses Myers. Tour Creek is in the county. However, we have a sign for Tour Creek, and Martin Montalvo, who is the operations director, is that an operations director, right, or manager for Public Works? The county has agreed to install that particular sign at that location. I'm not even sure now which street it crosses that we're going to be signing it.
Doug, hold on a second. I'm having trouble switching the pictures to the
Okay.
projectors.
I was just going to go through the list and then we can look at the
okay.
pictures.
Yeah, sure.
There's some no-name creeks that are signage, and the rest of them, we don't have anything on them. But the unnamed creeks, there's ones that are, does everybody know what Clackamas Federal Credit Union is in Warner Parrot? There's a stream that goes here that feeds into that stream, which the Public Works calls the theater ditch stream, that crosses at that point. There's a no-name street that has not gone in yet, but it is going to be on Frontier Parkway. That comes off of Myers, and if you drove on it, you could go all the way through Leland on that. But that road passes the what's the name of the park? That's the major park that's there. And so that one will be put in. So there's a total of 12 signs that are currently in applications. And then you go through them again if he is able to bring them up. I don't know if you got the pictures of all of them or not.
I just found the folder, sorry, on the Public Works server, so let's see. One moment. This may take a little bit.
I guess I will say, Doug, that I was pleasantly surprised on my drive to work one morning crossing Abernathy Creek, and I saw the sign after it was installed. So it looked really good.
Yeah, I think
So,
they look good.
yeah.
People ask why lampreys, but the person that designed that particular logo, it was a former Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife staff person that worked with lampreys specifically.
Let's see. Street sign.
When I was in college, they trained us how to get rid of them. Really?
You know, well, it's a different story these days.
Yep.
Okay, so Abernathy Creek.
Yeah, and that must be on Washington.
That may be on, by Abernathy, just across the street from Abernathy Center on
Let's say 14th
14th
and
Yeah.
John Adams.
and John.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's
There you
Washington
go.
up at the stop sign.
Okay,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, looking up
Maybe.
Chapel.
That should have been a no-name stream. That's not Abernathy. We got to get this.
Yes.
We got to get the name off of that one. That's a no-name.
That's, yeah, it's coming down from the high school football.
Yeah.
field.
Yeah, that's not Abernathy Creek. So we need to get if we don't have another sign.
Yeah. I've heard it called High School Creek, but I don't know.
And it's not an official name.
Right, it's not
Yeah.
official.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to get that one off.
Okay.
We'll get the.
No.
We'll get another no names creek. I think originally, and I looked there to see if it was there. There was supposed to be one also on Main Street at the Abernathy Creek, and that's what that sign came from. And I'll have to get a hold
Okay.
of. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is not Abernathy Creek. That's the one. Now this is the one on Anchor Way.
Anchor
Yeah.
Way, looking towards Redland Road.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
And
And this is the one on.
other
This is the one
The
on
other direction.
Washington.
The other direction.
Oh, that's the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
This is the other
way.
direction. Yeah. There's two signs on. Yeah.
there's a lot of
Both
traffic.
both sides.
It's good. Okay, where's this?
That's Newell Creek, and that's the Environmental Learning Centers to the right there.
Okay, yeah, okay.
On Beaver Creek Road, that's going the other direction. And that's a stream crossing, and that is the one, you know where the duck pond is on Washington, on
Oh, yeah.
Myers?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a stream that comes out of that duck pond that's just on the other side there of the shopping center where Higgins used to be.
right.
This one is,
Mud, I
Out
think,
of focus.
okay, this is Mud Creek, and this is also on Myers.
yeah.
You can see the utility line in there in the background. Singer Creek is on Pearl.
Mud Creek and then Singer Creek.
That's on
Before you
Pearl.
go up the hill.
Yeah, as you go up the hill, and again, it has signs on both sides.
Oh, going up Pearl. Yeah.
Yep.
And going the other direction. Mud Creek again,
Okay.
going the other direction, I guess.
Okay, so that's on Myers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
same
again-
thing.
Okay, this is,
Can zoom in on that.
uh-oh,
Newell.
This is Newell Creek.
no.
Says
It
Newell.
says Newell Creek.
Yeah, I gotta get together. These should be no names. This streams, oh dear. I should have looked more closely. This is a no name.
Who made the map?
We did. We did, but,
What street is that?
well, the only thing,
Warner Milne.
yeah, this is Warner Milne. This is there where that stream crosses, and that's not Newell Creek. Okay,
All right.
yeah.
Next.
That's by the credit
Well,
union.
I'm glad we're going through these.
Wait, okay, so it's over near, okay, yeah. It drains into the, oh, yeah, where is that?
That's by the credit union.
Yeah.
Going to Hillendale Park?
No. This is, there's no park there. This is
Yeah.
where the credit union is on Warner Milne.
And I don't know which way that would flow.
The credit union is on the other side
Left
there.
side.
Yeah.
And that,
Coffee Creek.
this is Coffee Creek, and this is correct, and this is where Chapin Park is. You can see Chapin Park in the background there.
Parrot, yeah, okay. So on the upper left. Parrot, Coffee Creek.
We'll have to send a memo out, and we may have to make some more some more
Glad we're looking at these. Okay, Abernathy.
no-name crossings.
Washington.
So I better take those down. We have an Abernathy Creek, Abernathy at the chapel,
Okay.
and we have a Newell. That was a point of confusion, I think, because it flowed into Newell Creek Canyon, I think, so they,
Right, so the
but
ones
that's
that,
not, we regard Newell Creek as originating there on the campus.
so the ones
And
at
so
14th.
Newell is the one there at the credit, Clackamas County Credit Union. So those should,
Right.
oh, no, the Abernathy one is not at Chapin. The Abernathy ones there at the Abernathy Center.
Yeah, by the chapel.
Yeah,
I think
At the
there's two
chapel,
there. I think
right.
There's two on each, one on each road, yeah.
Yeah.
They're both.
okay, we'll get that one straightened out. I'll make sure, yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you brought those forward.
Yeah, I'm glad I found them on
Get
the
those
server.
fixed up.
I didn't even know they were there until right before the meeting. So, so that was Public Works Road Crew and,
Yes, and we're really happy. I mean, Public Works provided the post and installed them for with no charge to us, so that was very nice. Okay,
all right. So, where are we? So you wanted to look over the work plan and then,
yeah, let's continue looking at that work plan. I don't know what happened to us here.
let me,
Oh, yeah, you're going back into it, okay.
I'll pull it up here like we've done before so that we can see any potential changes in real time. And here we go.
Okay,
So let me get this in an easier viewing situation. Oh, that's not easier.
So where should I be? Just
Well-
on the work plan in the document, or?
should I come
Yeah,
up on the screen?
Let me try a different.
Go ahead and,
Do the,
The work
yeah,
plan.
go back and come into,
Okay, there, all right.
Okay. I'll zoom
Okay.
in a little bit so we can see what we're trying to do. And there's 3 pages.
This is 11 by 17 piece of paper when you print it out, so there are 3 pages. And I'm not even sure at this point whether the city commission goals are in the first column are up to date. But we can check those by looking at the wall over there. First goal for city commission was cultivate an environment for successful economic development. And the corresponding responsibility under our bylaws is to promote community involvement in natural resources conservation. And there's some relevant projects under that with respect to the Cove project, the Willamette Falls Legacy project, Railroad Quiet Zones, which is a public works project, Beaver Creek Industrial Lands, incentive programs, and enhancing tourism. Specific activities for the NRC are in the middle column here. Stream and interpretive signage could enhance tourism. You develop signage for improved public awareness of natural resources, including streams and trees, development sites and heritage sites, and park sites we've got in here. Approach artists in Three Rivers Art Guild, collaborate with PRAC, and pursue Metro grant. Interface with other tourism agencies for enhanced interpretive activities, and then prioritize the signage on the creeks and this says emphasize canopy preservation over and near these creeks.
Okay, let's look at every one of the develop signage, improve public awareness of natural resources, streams. Okay, we have that. Park sites, walking trails.
Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have not approached the Three Rivers Art Guild. We did have an artist do the signs, but not a member of Three Rivers Art Guild.
Let's just go through them. I would just suggest we go through them and then maybe come back. And
Yeah.
does that sound good?
Awesome. Collaborate with PRAC, which we have been doing. Possibly NRC interface with other tourism agencies. I'm going to hold on to this one, and I'm going to make a report later on the NRC, on the tourism thing.
So the next one we have at the bottom here is pursue and advance habitat projects under the Lower Harbor Trust Fund, which is part of the Clackamas Cove restoration.
Yeah, we should keep that in. As far as I know, the Cove is still part of that study.
Right.
I don't think we've had an update from John Runyon on that.
Right, so let me write that in. Oh, wrong keyboard, sorry.
Confusing enough to have one without 2.
Cascade Environmental.
Yeah.
In 2018?
Yep.
Okay. So next one we got.
Continue to collaborate with the Willamette Falls Legacy project.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we ought to try to get an update on that, but with a focal point on the, what is it? What is that? That one goal, nature,
Oh yeah, habitat enhancement.
habitat enhancement, yeah, and to try to get a specific update on that from.
Can I type this in?
Metro just approved the
So
thing.
Riverwalk,
That was, yeah.
What was that?
Metro just approved the Riverwalk project,
Yeah.
which was
Um,
really cool to see.
Yeah, I thought they'd done that a long time
I thought they
ago.
had too, but
Glacial speed.
Is that okay what I'm writing there?
Yeah, there. And let's see if we can get Brian Vaughn to come to speak to us on that one.
Yes.
You want to put that under the what needs to happen?
I'm trying to do it, but I can't get the cursor to go into that box for some reason. So I'm like,
Okay,
yeah, maybe go.
if you can't, don't worry about it. It's just as long as we get it in there somewhere.
Locked
There it
up.
There it goes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Save.
okay.
Next one, goal 2, address critical facility needs. This primarily deals with Public Works Center and deferred maintenance issues on city buildings under the city commission's goals. And that's still right.
It is ongoing. We did write that letter of support, not, I think the year before last, I think
Yes.
2016. And that's all in the court system now.
Yeah, the appeals that are currently going on are the appeals regarding the historic designation proposal by the Mclaughlin Neighborhood Association on one hand, and then the Historic Review Board's approval of the master plan design, which is a secondary appeal. So there's 2 appeals of it going on. The actual master plan amendments, the original master plan, which you know was approved in 2009, is proposed for amendment, but they're waiting until these Historic Review Board appeals are done before they submit those, since they will have bearing on the site plan review.
Okay.
So is there anything here that we need to change?
Tour,
No.
discussion on stewardship of resources, public works and city sites.
Okay.
Have we had a tour?
Well, we had a tour, but it was a while ago, and I
Yeah.
think since then, there's been a lot of re-looking at the site. And I don't know what the ultimate site plan is going to look like when it's submitted, so it might be time for an update.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just keep, let's hold on to that. Are there any sites that, the public works thing, I don't think, because we're going to see too much until the court's thing. Are there any particular sites anybody's interested in touring?
Other sites?
Yeah.
Well, let me think. We've got, there's where the police station and where community development will be moving to at the Mount Pleasant building is not within a natural resource overlay
No.
district. It's flat, and it's at the intersection of Lynn Avenue and Warner Milne and Warner Parrott Road. So we'll move over there at the end of this year, looks like. And then the police department will be going through a land use process for their new facility there in the next 2 years. So, but with respect to how the site is designed and sorts of landscaping and that sort of thing, we would like go to all the different groups and get people's input on that. Other sites? I don't know. A lot of these public works pump stations and, public infrastructure type things that are under public works maintenance or park sites and that sort of thing, some of them fall within natural resource areas. So we could potentially look at those as much smaller sites, but how they're landscaped and how they interact with the sewer system and the storm drainage system is related to natural resources responsibilities. Just a suggestion. Yeah. But they're all over the city. Yeah. So, okay. Goal 3, enhance livability of the community. The city commission's priority is working with Tri-City Service District on the governance, improving transit service within the city, getting the sewer moratorium areas cleaned up, and so most of that work has been done. I know the transit TriMet outreach and southeast corridor and what is called the southeast area enhancement plan for TriMet is still under discussion. So
I imagine that these goals are going to be addressed in the coming year by the commission for its 2-year budget process. So these things are probably change.
So
and we'll go ahead and look at what we have here.
Assist with connectivity between Rossman Landfill Site, Interpretive Center, Cove, and Willamette River. Advocate for enhancement and maintenance of Metro South Wetland as a north gateway to Oregon City. Continue to work with the Cove development on habitat restoration. And pursue and enhance the projects under the NRDA process with John Runyon.
I think all those should remain.
Okay. Goal 4. City Commission, seek opportunities to maintain communications with citizens and facilitate citizen participation. NRC would be communicating with neighborhood associations, citizen involvement committee, it should be, and the business community. Conduct natural resources walking tours as an annual event, which is Jerry's responsibility. Prepare educational materials about street trees for distribution to the public, which is my responsibility. Participate in natural resources focused events associated with Arbor Day and Earth Day at city or urban renewal agency owned land in partnership with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council and Friends of Trees. So that's something that we do every year. Strengthen and encourage participation in the Heritage Tree Program. Huge priority for Dorothy, and I'm working with her on that. Potentially find sources of revenue for grants administered by the Planning Division to offset costs of arborist reports and assistance. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Pete, I want to go up. There was one that we had the focus on tourism, I think. Where was that?
Yeah.
I want to go up to that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I'm going to come back to is, and Jerry's not here, but I guess we didn't have a meeting in December or December or November, right?
November the 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you talked about the Waterboard Park.
Yes. This has to do with Jerry's recommendation on having the designation of the geologically significant area for Waterboard Park. And I had emailed Scott Burns, and he did reply to me. He suggested the organization to get a hold of was Oregon Department of Geology and Mineral
Dogami.
Yeah, Ogami. And but Laura Turway, who is the planning director, has suggested what we should do in order to get this, into the city's perspective, is to perhaps sit down with the economic development. Is it manager, director?
Eric Underwood is our economic development director.
Eric Underwood. Anyway, looking at that as part of a tourism piece to fit within the goals that we're establishing. And so, Pete, perhaps we can start facilitating in this, in this manner, to perhaps arrange a meeting with the appropriate staff. And I said, Laura suggested Eric Underwood for
Yeah,
that effort.
okay, that's a good idea.
So that, you know, we have something that could be built specifically into the city goals.
Okay. And that would be something that we should coordinate with PrAC on as well.
Yes.
So our geologic hazard map was developed by Ogami.
The Geologic Hazard Map is mapping a lot of other sources of information, including Dogami information, but also a lot of reports that come out of Portland State and the state. And then it's also based off of the city's LiDAR data. And what Dogami maps in terms of known landslide areas. So if there's a known landslide, the city overlay is a 200-foot review area and buffer within which we review. And then if it's, then the slope layer with anything over a certain percent slope, which in this case in the code is 25%, anything that's mapped that steeply has a 50-foot buffer within which it's reviewed. And then if it's reviewed for development, we're talking about, there's a set of higher construction standards and higher requirements as far as professional expertise for whoever's designing.
And some of the overlays that we have associated with the streams and so forth was actually came out of the Metro, following Metro's designation. However, the city actually expanded that. They only had 50-foot buffers, and when the city basically adopted those codes and got those codes into the city, we established the 200-foot buffers around anadromous fish-bearing streams. So we have a much larger buffer than Metro requires.
Right. And I can say that since that map and code amendment has been in place, it has really helped the engineering department in the decision-making process when it comes to scrutinizing development in these areas. Not only that, but the requirement for peer review that is in the code is really good, because now the city has a certified engineering geologist who reviews what the applicant's geologist puts together. And then once you go to building permit, the code requires that the original geologist or the engineer who designed the plan stamps the building plans to make sure it goes all the way through the process. He doesn't say, I'm done with the preliminary review, go build the house. He has to make sure that it met his original specifications, which were custom for that development. So that's actually working.
Good.
Okay. Anything else anybody sees in the goals that we want to edit? The only thing on
Yeah.
it's something that would be nice to do, but approach artist, Three River Art Guild, nobody has done that.
Where is that? I cannot find that.
That's right here. Let's not do it at any point soon. I'll tell you, some of those, there's a lot of our local artists in the county. The Three Rivers Art Guild is basically throughout the county. And a lot of them do some great natural, wildlife pictures and so forth, do a great job on those.
Yeah, agreed.
But I don't, maybe I was the one that suggested that originally, but if so, I never did anything about it.
Well, the idea had been that they assist with the signage and that sort of thing? Or
On the street signage?
Or just?
It might have been, and we got somebody else that did it.
I think Dorothy may have suggested it as well, but I can't remember. She's not here, so.
And can we incorporate that with some sort of like Arbor Day event or something? Invite artists from the guild to exhibit their work or something like that?
That's a
and have
thought.
like a larger.
That's a real nice thought, yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
What was okay, so you had sent me an email about that $500 grant in support of Arbor Day. And I think the deadline was the 22nd of January.
Yeah, the Great Oregon City Watershed's submitting one.
Okay.
There's no
This one is like specifically supported by Oregon Community Trees Foundation in support of Arbor Day. So if that's a good idea. I mean, I don't know how we put it together, but it's a fairly,
it's problematic to do it at that point
It's
because
easy to get.
the time
You have to have a good concept.
we'd have to have the Three Rivers argue. But do they do this on an annual basis? You know, the granting entity.
They do, yeah. Well, it depends because they like to spread the money around between different cities. And we've had it 1 year. So if you're not absolutely going to move forward with a concrete concept, they want you to tell them straight away so that they can take the money to another city.
Maybe it's something that we could take a look at for next year,
Okay.
and then actually get the Three Rivers.
Plan ahead a little.
Have a major
Give 'em a heads
event in one of our parks where there's some tree planting activities, but to advertise it to the more general public, which that really doesn't happen. I mean, students come in and so forth, tree plantings and so on, but yeah, that's a great idea. So are these our 2-year goals to come into the budget biennium?
Well, that one is not tied to any kind of budget,
Okay.
which is nice. Because it's tied to when you hold Arbor Day,
Yeah.
which is usually for Oregon first week in April sometime. But it's
we'll
whenever
probably be revisiting this depending on what the city comes up with goals anyway.
Yeah,
And
okay.
and so it's something indeed to think about for next year.
It's only $500, but it is nice to have because you can use it for publicity, and this would be something that would really be a good partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If it's early April, are we talking about a tented facility for artists to have their artwork in?
We would consider that.
Well, that's a good thought.
Because I can't see artists wanting to be out there.
That's a very good point.
Especially watercolors.
Most of them around here have pop-ups.
The idea is a good one, and to tie it to some other event that the city's having, it would be a great one in which we're having some kind of a nature activity. I don't know what else it might be, but yes.
Invite artists to display natural resource related artwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could even turn it into a competition if you wanted to, maybe.
There you go.
If you come up with money, yes.
Yeah.
Most of them are serving artists.
Or a community competition, a community art competition.
Yeah.
It could be
Right.
Yeah.
something with a,
Sure.
High school and the community college.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
That's a great idea. So why don't we modify that a little bit?
Yeah.
An art event featuring, what's the word, natural,
For an art event.
Natural resource related art.
natural resource related art.
Oregon Community Trees Grant for an art event to improve
There's some
publicity. and
people that concentrate on photographing waterfalls that are just
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah.
All right. That's great. Good job. Okay, so we were almost done down the bottom of page 2 here. Strengthen, okay, yeah. And page 3,
a lot of these ones are ongoing activities, so, need to update city's water resources stream and wetland inventory from 1999.
Well, that's still on process. This is really the discussion dealing with when the state delineates new streams to have some kind of something in the code that enables a holding zone until the area can be looked at. This has come up where we have, we've had Paul Edgar speak to us on this, where 6 cottage-style houses are going into Kanuma, and a stream had been delineated there, but that was done just a couple of years ago by the state, and the buffer area had never been established around that stream. So, I know that the planning is looking at that.
Yeah, and you presented to the planning commission.
Yes, and the planning, and so that is an ongoing thing until, in fact, we've dealt with that particular problem.
Yeah, and I was going to talk briefly about that project at the end of, I can talk about it now though, but I don't want to get off topic, but I was going to report on what the status of that.
Yeah, why don't we go through the goals and we can go into the status there.
Okay. So the next one would be Metro Title III and Title 13 enhancement and education for habitat improvement. So that's something that we want to pursue. Something that came up this last year was we were approached, and the presentation was given by the Backyard Habitat folks in the Columbia River Land Trust, which I think is doing exactly this. Because it's happening on smaller lots and private property, and it's an incentive program. So I would.
Now, is this being done independent of anything, that it doesn't require city approval? They're doing it in Portland.
Right. What they would like the city to do is promote it and potentially augment the program through Public Works. Because it's in furtherance of the stormwater goals. And particularly with respect to natural resources and streams in people's backyards. So you can get various levels of certification depending on whether you're just getting rid of invasive species and then moving towards a more structured habitat in your yard area. The Soil and Water Conservation District is also very interested in promoting the program as well. So I think maybe we should scribble those in. Say support efforts of backyard habitat program.
Yeah.
Right.
As it expands into Oregon City. Into.
Yep, very good.
All right. This is an old one, not that one. The Coordinated Strategy for Invasive Species Management 2018. Something that we still need to continue through with, I think. Then this one was a very old thing that was discussed in years past, similar to what Lake Oswego has, and the point of it is to disincentivize tree cutting on properties that are considering annexation into the city. And require mitigation if an annexing property owner does cut all their trees right before annexation to facilitate land development. It's a controversial issue, but annexations are by definition discretionary land use decisions approved by the Planning Commission and City Commission.
And we've discussed it before, and depending on who is the decision-making body at the time, it hasn't gone anywhere yet. So, because they don't want to penalize property owners who are considering annexation, because it's more of a, on the one hand, land is designated for urban development rather than natural resource preservation, and we already have a lot of tree code once you annex to the city. But on the other hand, the mature large trees are the biggest issue.
The thing is, and as you know, yes, they're annexed, and then the developers come in, and if there are trees there, you have one mitigation level if the tree is in the building envelope, and another mitigation criterion if it's outside in terms of if you're removing them, then the city gets money, which is used for the Arbor Day activities for planting trees around the city. So, I mean, it's a funding source. The thing is that the person coming in has decided to annex in and simply doesn't want to do that, or the developer they want to work with doesn't want to do that, the trees can be cut down and then we don't have any possibility to deal with it.
Right. I mean,
The thing is, the city guys doesn't really have any jurisdiction until it gets annexed in.
that's right.
Yeah, so it's
a catch-22.
yeah, so what does Lake Oswego do?
Well, they have a look-back policy where they can look on aerial photographs, and it's based on canopy removal on aerial photographs, and Planning Commissioner Paul Espy is a senior planner over there, so he knows very well. He actually is responsible for enforcing the policy, so I would talk to him more about it and get some more details and how well it works in actuality.
I'm kind of divided on it. A person who's had this land and under the forestry exemption in terms of property taxation. I mean, those trees are there for timber production essentially, and are you going to penalize the person when they actually were growing those trees for timber production? And so I got kind of mixed feelings about it personally.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be one thing if it was a natural preservation or not a timber lot. So anyway.
How many properties that we annexed into Oregon City that have done that? Has that been a big problem?
Recently?
Yeah.
Well, last year, one. It was Sears Farm property, 35 acres, and a fairly sizable timber stand on there, but they had been actually removing timber from that long before they considered annexation, and then when it became very controversial was right before the annexation was proposed.
So much of what I see in where I live were Christmas tree farms and filbert farms. I mean, they were actually agricultural things.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that it's been that.
No,
Right.
Jasmine.
I suppose it could be, but.
It could be. If you look out to the concept plan areas, I mean, there are some concept plan properties where there are some significant tree groves, and they've been identified in the Beaver Creek Road plan. There's a tree grove. It's a sort of a triangular green area on the concept plan that is important and was important for the adoption of that concept plan. How we actually move forward with protecting that when we don't have a zoning in place yet is very difficult to say at this point. So it's a ways out, but
Maybe some kind of a intermedia, like a compromise between you can't cut trees down to being, if the city has designated something as being potentially significant.
City buys the land before.
Then if it gets annexed after that and you cut it down, before you annex it and you knew that,
It
then.
becomes part of the park system.
There you go.
Yeah, it becomes part of the park system.
yeah. Or you negotiate with the
something, or-
developer to treat that piece of property as a tract or a grove and try to preserve it.
Right.
And then tie that requirement to the annexation early in the process, rather than
Perhaps
waiting for the subdivision
Right.
proposal.
They used to have what were called planned unit developments, and people could increase their density by going ahead and donating land for parks, and we don't have that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have it anymore, but
It's gone.
if it's, if it's something that's done before the annexation actually occurs, an agreement can be made for that to happen, and maybe it is the case, well, I guess that has a certain density coming in, but we can modify the density if we get that piece of property.
Okay. Should I make some notes about this in that regard, or just, it's a little more detail to it?
Yeah.
Respect to goal 5, I guess it goes to goal 5 resources and other natural resources. Yeah, so the more annexations we do, the longer the staff reports get with respect to natural resources. And it's good because we're focusing in on these concept plan areas, but, so, yeah. Okay. So, anything else? Support dark sky lighting initiatives in 2018. We will be going through a code amendment process this year.
I'm going to just make a comment on that. Public Works made a presentation to the Planning Commission. I was there for a different reason, but talking about the lights they do use and LED lights and so forth they use now, the light is directed out to the streets and at a certain angle. And so as they replace those lights and they, basically replace them as failures occur because they're very costly to replace them. But also including these, what they call acorn lights that in fact, a lot of them we have emit into the skies. They actually, Martin Montalvo brought an example of lights that they're replacing those with that in fact that does direct the light downward. So I think the city is really progressing on that effort as they replace street lights.
Yeah, that is, that's a big deal. What the lighting code also exempts are residential subdivisions because, they're entirely.
What do the codes do in terms of shopping centers and their own light systems? Do we have a dark sky thing that applies to them? Because we're doing well on the streets, but the question
and commercial.
The whole thing really got stimulated by having the planetarium there at the college and then having that shopping center right there that the lights affected the views and so forth that you see at the planetarium.
Right.
And whether as these developments come in, whether there are requirements that they have their lights directed downwards or benefits to doing that because it's economically more viable to them to get the lights onto the street.
Right.
But do we have any code that covers that?
Well, the lighting code that we have in place now affects non-residential site plan review.
Okay.
It doesn't apply to single-family residential.
Right.
And it's, so that's difficult to administer and.
Right, but the point is, we essentially have a dark skies code applying to those situations.
Yeah. I think the other way to approach it, if you have the time and resources, first you map the areas of the city that you want to protect from light pollution, whether they be natural resources or observatories or something else. And that's what the dark sky organization really promotes, is trying to divide your city up into lighting zones, which is like an overlay.
district. It's difficult, though. It requires some serious thought and expertise in administration. The other way is to just incentivize homeowners by educating them about light pollution and better fixtures, which is the other thing that the International Dark Sky Association does, is just, say, this fixture works and as a dark sky approved. And so that's...
Since most of the development that's going to occur around the college is going to be industrial.
Right. Yeah, that would be subject to it. Yeah.
The protections would essentially be in place then.
Right. Okay. Yeah, they would be. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Goal force, maintaining communications with citizens, maintaining and updating list of natural resources committee priorities. We do that every year. Promote updates and annual reports about the NRC to the city commission. Schedule joint meeting with PRAC. So.
And we've been doing that.
Yeah, we're doing that.
I would suggest that as we proceed down this path on looking at the significant geological overlay there, since a lot of that's in Waterboard Park, to talk to PRAC about that. And I'd be happy to make the presentation. I mean, I could pull it forward. I'm a member of PRAC, and I could actually pull it forward at our next PRAC meeting in terms of the discussions that we have had.
Okay.
All right. Almost finished here.
Okay.
Goal 4 and 5, let's see, schedule, planning commission, discussion, some redundancy going on here. Final goal of city commission is to maintain fiscal health and long-term stability. And they actually mention an annexation strategy, but that's more towards streamlining the annexation process, I think. With respect to the NRC, that includes supporting the economic development strategies about the Cove and the Waterfront Master Plan 2002 implementation, which is all about improving access to the river from the other parts of the city. Not sure what this is. Oh, part of the Oregon City Business Alliance meets 4 times a year. River Assets and Opportunities Task Force. So this was something suggested by Jerry, I believe, at the last meeting or prior to it. So keep that on there for the time being. Okay.
I think he said he did meet with them occasionally or once or something. I can't quite remember.
Okay. Well, we can get an update on it. Very good. So bring this table forward at the next meeting.
Okay.
Close.
Okay, and back to our regular menu here.
I don't think I have any more presentations to show you tonight, so I'm just going to roll up the screen. Communications. So I've got a short list of things to share with you. We looked at the watershed signs. The Metro Newell Creek Canyon site plan and design review application is under review right now. We had two public comment periods. It's being processed as a type 2 site plan, so there's no public hearings.
Now, what is this again, one more time?
This is for the day use area and trail enhancements.
Oh, yes, this
in
is
Newell
Metro's
Creek.
thing, yeah.
as well as the Metro's long-term plan for the enhancement and restoration of the areas that they're managing, both within and outside the cities. So they're doing a concurrent application through the county to get the trails parts and the habitat restoration approved through that, because in the county, they're also subject to Title III and Title 13 regulations. And the staff report for that is due. We have a 120-day deadline, which is February 1st. So we're going to be issuing that decision soon. We did get comment from the Hillendale Neighborhood Association with respect to concerns about safety from the homeless populations moving into the canyon and the camping. But some of that, a lot of that has been addressed through Metro's long-term management and maintenance policy. I believe they've worked to, in a sensitive way, move the homeless camps out of there. And there'll be a vault toilet there, a parking lot of about 26 spaces, and interpretive kiosks and picnic areas at the top. So this would be at the end of Gales Lane and Fox Lane. So it should be a sufficiently sized parking lot that there wouldn't be any overflow parking on adjacent streets. That was another concern. And then from there, there's a trail system goes down. One of the trail systems is more for walkers and birders and interpretive. And then there is a cycling trail, which is separate.
And that's Metro Park's first bicycle trail, I think.
I think so.
I think they haven't had one before.
Yeah.
There's a segment of it that's, because of their planning, there's both pedestrian and bicycle, but there's one that's dedicated to bicycle to minimize the conflicts that happen in between people on bicycles and people on foot.
Yeah.
Well, it's more of a mountain bike, track.
Yeah.
It's like
an off-road.
Yeah.
not a commuter track.
That's right. No, that's right.
It's a downhill and then they have a
Right.
shared uphill.
Cool.
So that's going on. There's also several wetlands that will be enhanced and have a bridge that goes across them. They call them sag ponds.
Mhm.
And then several of these smaller tributaries that go into there, it's called Tumble Creek, I believe. They did delineations to figure out where the buffers are, and I think the overall impacts are very minimal due to the footings on the bridges and things like that. It came to about a cumulative impact of about 2,000 square feet of what we call non-exempt trails. That means trails that are slightly wider than 4 feet and and so anywhere there's a trail slightly wider than 4 feet within the vegetative corridor, that requires mitigation. So the exempt trails have to be no wider than 4 feet and be pervious. Yeah. So it was about 2,000 square feet of overall impact. And so anyway, that's going on. Couple of natural resources applications which have not been publicly noticed yet are coming up. One is Water Environment Services replacing the footings on the bridge over the Clackamas River to support a pipeline replacement there. So there's a pipe that goes across underneath, it's slung underneath that bridge, and the footings need to be seismically upgraded. And that has an impact on the vegetative corridor. So we're requiring a type 2 application, natural resources application for that, which you'll be noticed on. Then a bigger project of Tri-City Plant is they are going to do a master plan amendment for some of the phasing that was originally approved in 2008 is changing. So we're going to be doing a liquids, 2 big distillation tanks, and the timing of that has changed. So they have to go back to the Planning Commission to amend that. And then what had originally been approved was their administration building be removed from the vegetative corridor, which is delineated now, and restored. with native plantings, because they're gonna move the administration building south away from the river eventually, and as a laboratory. I think that's what it is. It's actually a lab building that they're removing from the corridor, which is good. On Malala Avenue, there was a stop work order for someone creating a parking lot without proper permits on the gnome-grown marijuana store. And it was in the Natural Resource Overlay District. So the contractor had no clue what he was stop moving boulders around. You are on the edge of a geologic hazard area and a stream corridor. Oh.
Didn't score too much?
Yeah.
Was the contractor was a side business for it?
So that was a big oops. Equitable Housing Project is moving along. We had our second meeting last night with our project advisory team. The first round of code amendments, and the focus of this project is to look at the zoning code in detail and see whether or not we can incentivize more types and smaller types of housing in existing areas of the city, in existing single-family neighborhoods, through innovative projects like internal conversions of existing homes, accessory dwelling units, smaller footprint homes, duplexes, triplexes, things that don't generate an impact and which would create greater opportunities for more affordable housing. So it's going to be it's an ambitious project and not without controversy, but there's a lot of need for it. So will be three more project advisory team meetings, and then we'll be going into public hearings with a view towards adopting that in late November. So I'm the project manager for that. So if you have any questions about it, give me a call or holler. Cove Phase 2 status, I think they're getting ready to submit that. So that is a huge phase. It is potentially up to 400 additional units of apartments along the waterfront in the Cove. And about 6 buildings in one phase.
I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah.
I was involved in that much earlier on.
Right.
And they were talking about reducing the slope there into the cove and using that for fill, and then but also vegetative corridor. Are they still doing that?
Yeah. Well, there's balance cut and fill requirements. The bank grading is still being engineered, so they don't know how extensive they have to do that. But it's currently very steep, and the intention is to try to create more of a natural bank and still meet balance cut and fill. But I think there are pockets of cottonwoods where potentially you could save a few and still do that, but they haven't identified where those are yet. That would be part of an updated natural resource overlay district application with this amendment. Yeah.
Of course, that's going to. Does that end up ultimately with the city commission? Is that strictly
master plan is just the planning commission unless it's appealed, in which case it goes to city commission.
I'll come back to the general topic in a minute.
Okay. And the Kanuma Cottage project, so the Historic Review Board approved the architectural layout, and then the applicant has applied for site plan and design review and geologic hazard review with 5 units on 4 tax lots under the Cottage Housing Code, which is.
Now, this is the one that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And I'd like to come back to that again.
Yeah.
After go through this.
So it's a delineated wetland they found on site that wasn't within the Natural Resources Overlay District. It wasn't part of the original inventory that the city did in 1999, and subsequently is not subject to our buffer requirements and mitigation plan. is subject to state law, so they can't fill the wetland or do anything with the wetland, but there wouldn't be no buffer next to it. And they have proposed structures right up to the edge of the wetland, decks and that sort of thing. So public comment period ended. Doug, you gave me comments, so I have those. I don't know if he's going to modify the application at this point anyway for other reasons, having to do with grading and public facilities in the right-of-way. So at this point, I'm moving ahead with the proposed application, and I'm not sure what we're going to decide on it at this point. There's some it's a complicated application, and there's some serious considerations with respect to cut and fill in the geologic hazard area. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah. And that's all I have. I mentioned the Public Works Master Plan appeals status, so I don't want to go into more detail about that. But if you have anything to add to that discussion.
Yeah, I will. And here's the difficulty that we face. You have this 2-week notification.
Right. During the holiday.
And two of the things came up that, I can't respond to them as the chair of the Natural Resource Committee because we haven't had a meeting to discuss it.
Right.
And we really have to have some kind of mechanism where these things can come forward to us. And the 2-week doesn't work for us at well. And one of them that he was mentioning was the Kanuma cottages. And so I just wrote down a comment. I saw the layouts, and there was something on the back of the buildings that looked like they might have extended into a wetland area and so forth. So I made a brief comment in terms of those. But we have to develop some mechanism where somehow we can learn about these before the 2-week comment period occurs, so that we can actually look at this as a body and enable us to make more informed comments. And I know Laura Turway wants to work this out in some fashion.
Okay.
I don't know how you do it, but the point is it is a public comment period, but yet we're a governing body. Are we able to see these things a little bit
Earlier
ahead of
than
time?
2 weeks' notice, yeah. That's a really good question. There's probably several ways to approach it. There's thinking creatively, the moment we get a pre-application conference, that's technically a public record. Pre-application conferences are not formal applications. They're just a discussion. But that is the first bite of the apple, and if people know about it, the next step from after pre-application conference is the applicant has to go talk to the applicable neighborhood association. It's called the neighborhood association meeting requirement in the code. And so these are codified procedures, and there's no currently codified procedure to talk to the NRC or to PRAC or something like that in earlier in the process yet. So if we were to do something now, it would have to be an informal policy that the Laura and potentially the Planning Commission, the City Commission also kind of assent to. But I see value in it. And I do understand the difficulty that we have one regular meeting a month, and it's not going to jibe necessarily with this mandatory 2-week comment period that's tied to a 120-day land use process for everything. So, any other ideas you have, I'm open to them. And
we have to have a mechanism to deal with it, and we don't have one. I came to the Planning Commission because there was one where the property owner didn't know it. He had the property since 1996. He didn't know there was a subsequent overlay that came into his property, and he had extended his deck. And I mean, there wasn't anything malice about it, he just didn't know about it. And so there was some mitigation that occurred, and I went into the meeting, and I just made a slight comment, but didn't hear about that until after we had our last meeting. I mean, so there's no way for us to look at it.
Yeah, I guess the logical, simple thing would be a courtesy notification at the time of application, rather than at the time of formal public notice. So you're doing it much earlier in the process. You're actually doing it before the application has been deemed complete. Because under our code, the completeness period goes 30 days, and it's either deemed complete or incomplete. And if it's not complete, it goes another 30 days. Once it's deemed complete, starts the public notice period, the first 14 days. So if you did get notice on the very first day of application and say, look, this is an NROD, it's been applied for, then you can say, well, what's it about? You could form you could do either individually, anyone can do a public records request, and then you have the information. So let me talk to Laura about it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And she's anxious to work with us on it.
Yeah, I am too. I think it'd be good. Okay. Got that written down here.
We did this, right? NRC, work plan. So we're at our December 7th presentation. Trent and I made the presentation of what we had done, and I think you all received copies of the report. And somehow there was a little bit of hang up, but the written report has now subsequently been submitted to the city commissioners. So I guess that's all I have to say. So come to communications. Anybody have anything to communicate with about?
I kind of jumped the gun there and gave mine, sorry.
That's okay. No, your staff report came right after the work plan. No, you didn't jump the gun.
Oh, all right.
No, you were right on the agenda. The thing is, we had the NRC work plan listed next, and we already dealt with that. So, yeah. But anyway, and then that was fine.
Well, there's two different work plans there.
Which one? Oh, okay, so what are they?
18-015 and 11.8.
What is that? The
So
NRC
the
work plan.
document that I was working in on the screen was the old work plan from the November 8th. But
Right. So so we've covered it. That was the point I was making. We got ahead of schedule, but fine. That's good.
Oh yeah, 11.8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So communications. Does anybody have anything to say about anything?
Yeah, I know last month, Dee Dee and I had heard two presentations. We met for a regular time, and we heard two presentations. One was from Weedwise, which is from the Clackamas Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and heard about their program. And I've got some information here if anyone wants to take a look at that. And then we also heard about the arboriculture program at Clackamas Community College in support of the heritage trees, and our discussions around that. So I have more information around that if anyone's interested in taking a look.
yeah, what Rodney Walters, the instructor, came and he was really enthusiastic about working on the heritage tree program.
That makes me.
That students could not. What's that?
Go ahead.
Oh, to the extent that the students were allowed to, and as far as not competing with commercial arborists, so they could do it on public property, he said.
Yeah.
But it would be a little more problematic on private property. But, yeah.
Now that we've already closed the work plan discussion,
Well, you want
You want to go back to it?
tree tour.
should we open it up again?
We don't really need to,
We can talk
but
about it next meeting.
somewhere I read about a heritage tree group that put together a self-guided tree tour map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd just be like a map where you could go walk around the neighborhood.
Once we get heritage trees, we can do that.
We could just put really nice big tree tour.
Well,
Part of like a heritage trail or a, I don't know,
would
bigger-
they
Trees that
have to
should
be
be in-
formally designated in order to do that? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, trees that should be a heritage tree tour.
donate now.
You know, maybe not really. I don't think. I'm pretty open.
Significant trees of Oregon City. I mean, it doesn't even have to be
Sure, yeah.
heritage trees.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know if we had.
And then we could
Did we ever have that in
we
the
could
past?
display our gavel here, which
Yeah.
was from the Abernathy elm.
And you remember Francesca Anton? You know, she did a
Right.
bunch of work on that sort of thing. So I mean,
She had a
you've
whole
got
list of all the
running
trees.
list there that you could potentially
Yeah.
develop into a tour.
Actually, maybe
Yeah.
she should work with Jerry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was the other lady? Pam. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good. I think that would really be good because it would be.
I think she'd really enjoy doing that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure she would.
Keep Dee Dee busy too.
Let me scribble this down. Tree.
I'm sorry I didn't think about that when we had it open, but
That's okay. We can come back to it.
I was just doing some independent research on how to make it desirable to have your tree designated, you know? It's gotta be something you wanna do.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people want to do it if they recognize it gives some existence rights to that tree once you sell your property and it was a tree that you liked, and if they knew in fact that it had a level of protection after they sold the property, you know, to me, that would be the big selling point.
If it's gonna cost a homeowner several $1,000s to have it evaluated in order for it to become a
That's, you know,
heritage
that's the
tree,
issue.
then nobody's gonna do it.
Yeah,
You could put
that's old stuff, so.
Yeah.
put a viewing platform next to each one and charge a quarter.
What?
GoFundMe page.
For a tree.
I think we need to get that issue back on the agenda.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that these people would be happy to work on the public properties, and we've got a lot of trees that we need to get, and that can include street trees as well, you know. But make the police department, or excuse me, Public Works jump through a couple hurdles to cut down those trees there on. Well, they had to go. I mean, they came to us, they talked to us, and that's fine. That was
Didn't the
great.
one start falling down or dropping branches
Yeah,
or
I mean-
something on people's cars anyway?
And
So.
then they took
Yeah.
down the other two, which were in
Yeah.
the same position. And so they do that, but we need a more formal process to get those trees as heritage trees.
Right.
And
To Martin's credit, he is very sensitive and he wants to come before you anytime something potentially comes up.
oh, yes.
It's, you know, that's reflective of his conscientious and background. So, yeah, a more formalized process is certainly something we can discuss. Yeah. I have one last thing to report. I'm going to be gone all February in New Zealand. I'm going on
Good.
a bucket list trip.
Sounds awful.
Well, we can actually ask Laura Turway to take your place.
Yeah, so she'll probably be talking to you in February. I'm going down to South Island to hike the Kepler track and the Root Burn track and paddle a sea kayak around the Abel Tasman National Park.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow, great.
I haven't been down there in a long, long time, so looking forward to that. They have a, Department of Conservation that runs the natural resources for the entire country, and those all the walks, they call them the Great Walks, the Root Burn, the Milford, in Fiordland, south of the Southern Alps, and they're really nice. They're nice huts, and so it's not roughing it. But Yeah, I will be gone, so anything you need to get to me before then, make sure you do. Yeah.
You should have gone earlier and avoided that cold spell we had.
Yeah, I know.
Very good. Anybody else with something to add? I'm going to mention a couple things. The Great Oregon City Watershed Council, Brian Moonen, who's with Public Works, attends them all. But yesterday, Martin Matavo came, and Public Works is working with property owners on Abernathy Creek. There are monies available to do streamside plantings, and Public Works is, I guess, sort of required to do this, but is going into the area and working with land owners, and we'll be working with a list of a couple of landowners that we have had that we've worked with at the Watershed Council. But wanted you to know this process is a process that has now started off, and of course it's of great interest to Martin Montalvo, who was originally, his field of study was wetland biology. So that's something that's going to be ongoing, and I hope we could see some effect on the cooling of the waters of Abernathy Creek. They get very, very warm, and so that's something we need to deal with. I'll tell you what, if Laura is willing to meet with us, maybe we can just devote some, rather than having some of our formal topics, just have some discussion time about how we could better get involved in the process of these natural overlay issues that come up in terms of developments and so forth, and ask if Laura is willing to sit down and have a discussion with us, and we can have perhaps a less formal meeting in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Thanks. Well, Happy New Year, and I'm really looking forward to a productive year with you guys. It's going to be
Well,
good.
I just want to say, Pete, you've done a great job with us. We're really pleased with it.
Thank you.
I know it was very, very frustrating early on in other versions of the Natural Resource Committee, but you've got a great staff there in planning now, and I think it's far easier for you to communicate our interest and have them listen to, and I think you feel better about it too.
I do. I think we've come a long, long way, and it wasn't easy. I know we had to get facilitation, and that was really helpful. I think that really turned the corner when we started the bylaw amendment process. That was a big turning point for everybody. So I'm psyched about it, and I think the level of communication between us and the other groups and bodies and staff is way better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So we need to keep it up.
Any other thing for the good of the order? We're adjourned. 10 minutes later than